My name is Lena Whitmore, and the last gift my parents ever gave me was a $2 lottery ticket. Not because they believed in my luck, but because they didn't believe in me. That Christmas morning, my parents sat across from me at the kitchen table like they always did, smiling at my younger sister like she had hung the moon. My sister, Ariana, was the golden child. Perfect grades, perfect job, perfect everything. At least according to my parents. Mom slid a thick envelope across the table toward Ariana. Inside was a luxury cruise package worth $14,000. My sister gasped. "Oh my God, Mom!" Then my dad turned to me. He tossed a small folded paper onto the table. A scratch-off ticket. $2. "That's more your speed," he said with a shrug. Everyone laughed, even Ariana. I forced a smile and slid the ticket into my coat pocket. At that moment, I had no idea that tiny piece of paper would change everything. Because 2 days later, I scratched it, and the numbers matched. All of them. The jackpot was $78 million, and suddenly, the same parents who treated me like a joke were calling me 79 times in one night. But by then, I had already made a decision about what kind of daughter I was going to be. Growing up in the Whitmore house felt like living in someone else's shadow. Ariana was always the star. If she got an A on a test, my parents celebrated with dinner out. If I got an A, my mom would say, "Well, that's what you're supposed to do." Everything about Ariana was praised. Everything about me was tolerated. When she got accepted into a private university, my parents paid every cent of her tuition. When I asked for help with community college, my dad said, "You should learn independence." So I worked. 2 jobs, sometimes 3. I paid for school, rent, and food on my own. Meanwhile, Ariana lived in a downtown apartment my parents paid for. But the real difference between us wasn't money, it was expectations. My parents expected Ariana to succeed. They expected me to struggle. And when you grow up hearing that long enough, you start to believe it. That's why when my dad tossed me that $2 lottery ticket on Christmas morning, I didn't see it as a joke. I saw it as confirmation. In their eyes, I would always be the daughter who got the cheap gift. 2 days after Christmas, I stopped at a gas station on my way home from work. The ticket was still in my pocket. Honestly, I had forgotten about it. I sat in my car and scratched the silver coating off with a coin. At first, I thought I read the numbers wrong, so I checked again. Then again. Then I opened the lottery website on my phone. My heart started pounding because the numbers matched. Every single one. The jackpot prize was $78 million. For 10 minutes, I just sat there in silence. My hands were shaking. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just stared at the ticket like it might disappear. Eventually, I whispered one sentence out loud. "Holy hell." But the strangest part wasn't winning. It was realizing something else. For the first time in my life, my parents had accidentally given me something valuable, and I wasn't sure they deserved to know. Winning the lottery doesn't instantly give you clarity. It gives you questions. A lot of them. The lottery office told me to stay quiet until everything was processed. No announcements, no social media, no telling anyone. For the first week, I told no one. Not my friends, not my coworkers, definitely not my parents. But secrets have a funny way of slipping out. 2 weeks later, a local newspaper published the story. Local woman wins $78 million jackpot. They printed my name. Within minutes, my phone started vibrating. Texts, calls, voicemails. And at the top of the list, my mother. By the end of the night, I had 79 missed calls from my parents, from people who barely called me once a month before. That's when I realized something. They didn't want their daughter. They wanted the jackpot. And suddenly, I understood exactly how I was going to handle them. I waited 3 days before calling my parents back. 3. Not because I was busy, because I wanted them to wait. When my mom answered, she sounded breathless. "Lena, oh my God, we've been trying to reach you." My dad grabbed the phone. "Why didn't you tell us?" I leaned back in my chair. "You didn't ask." Silence. Then my mom laughed nervously. "Well, honey, we're family." I could practically hear the calculations happening in their heads. My dad cleared his throat. "We should talk about your future, financial planning, investments." Translation: "How much are you giving us?" But before they could ask the question directly, I asked one of my own. "Do you remember the gift you gave me on Christmas?" "The lottery ticket?" Mom said. "Yeah." "Well," I replied calmly, "it looks like that $2 gift turned out to be the best investment you've ever made." Neither of them laughed, because they already knew what they were about to ask. 3 days later, my parents invited me to dinner. Ariana was there too. They were smiling. Too much. Mom hugged me like we hadn't spent years barely speaking. "We're so proud of you," she said. That was a new sentence. Dinner was awkward small talk until my dad finally got to the point. "So, we were thinking." Of course they were. "With your winnings," he continued, "you could really help the family." I waited. Mom added, "We've always supported you." That almost made me laugh. Then Ariana spoke. "Well, technically that ticket came from Dad." There it was. My sister leaned forward. "So part of that money should belong to the family." I stared at them. 3 people sitting across from me, expecting millions, all because of a $2 ticket they gave me as a joke. And in that moment, I realized something. They weren't asking. They were planning to take it. I let them talk for nearly 15 minutes. They had a whole plan. Dad needed a new house. Mom wanted to retire early. Ariana wanted help starting a business. Apparently, my jackpot was their family project. Finally, I raised my hand. "Can I say something?" They all nodded. I took a slow breath. "Do you remember what Dad said when he gave me the ticket?" No one answered. "He said it was more my speed." My dad shifted in his chair. "That was just a joke." "Was it?" I asked. Because I remembered the laughter, the way everyone at the table looked at me, like I was the punchline. So I leaned forward and said the words they weren't expecting. "You gave Ariana a $14,000 cruise. You gave me a $2 ticket. So technically, the cruise was the real gift." Silence filled the room. Then I stood up. "And the ticket?" I smiled. "That was mine." The argument started immediately. My dad called me selfish. My mom said I was tearing the family apart. Ariana accused me of forgetting where I came from. But the truth was simple. For the first time in my life, I wasn't letting them decide my worth. I left the restaurant while they were still arguing. Over the next few weeks, the messages kept coming. Calls, texts, emails. Some angry, some desperate, some pretending nothing happened. But none of them apologized, because people like my parents don't think they're wrong. They think they're entitled. Eventually, the calls stopped. Not because they understood, but because they realized something. The daughter they underestimated was now the one holding all the power. 6 months later, I did something unexpected. I bought a house. Not a mansion, just a quiet place near the lake. Then I donated a portion of the money to a scholarship fund for students who had to pay their own way through college. Students like me. When the local newspaper covered the story, my parents saw it. My mom called again. This time, she only asked one question. Why would you give money to strangers? I thought about it for a moment. Then I answered honestly, because they never treated me like one. Winning the lottery didn't fix my family, but it did something better. It showed me exactly who they were and who I didn't want to be. That $2 ticket changed my life, but not because of the money, because it finally gave me something my parents never had: freedom. And if you made it this far in the story, make sure to like the video and subscribe for more stories like this. Also, tell me in the comments, where are you watching from, and what time is it there right now?